Hey, just wanted to throw in a little beginning thing before we get into this video. Um, this is a great example of what happens when we're working on vehicles or something like that. I started out just thinking I had a solution, and I ended up taking the entire rear axle apart in order to basically find nothing. I'm not sure what the deal is with it, but I did do some research off camera and found that the metal particles, that fine putty, as long as there's not shavings, that's pretty much expected, as I thought, when wearing in new bearings and things like that, and especially with everything being new on the rear of that truck. The other thing I heard was that the inner axle seals that I have on the basically where the axle shaft slides into the tube, there's an axle seal right there. And for the original design of this axle, you needed those in order to keep it from pushing all your fluid out of the axle tubes. However, with these tapered bearings that I have here, that black edging on it actually is its own seal, and it will seal up. It took a lot of research to find that out. And my old axle shafts were the same tapered bearings, and they had an inner axle seal as well, so I just kind of put one back without really thinking much about it. But that is intended design was to not have that inner axle seal there, so that it could let some of that oil get over to those bearings and oil them. And this truck doesn't really get driven hardly at all, so, and those bearings that are on the axle shafts currently don't seem to have really any wear to them. They look just fine. Again, since the rebuild on this thing, it's had maybe, I don't know, 100 miles, a couple hundred miles at best, if I'm lucky. So it's not really that big a deal on that. I will probably take those seals out so that way we can get the oil in there to make sure that they function as intended. I'm also probably going to pack those bearings with grease. It's never going to hurt anything, but I can at least set it up for the best possible circumstances for it to work. The other thing I did off camera was I dug through forums, I dug through everything I could find, and I still could not find a real direct answer on how this locker is supposed to act. And people are throwing around things like soft lockers and auto lockers and mechanical lockers, and that it, for pretty much 90% of the Grizzly locker stuff that I've seen, it says there should be that ratcheting noise when you're going around turns. I've never heard that on this axle or this locker. But it functions differently than my old spool did. It definitely turns tighter. It is not as aggressive in the turns. I don't hear the wheel chirping, so something's happening there. But I have it set up right now, and I can show you just across the garage here. Over there, I've got it with my old axle shafts inside of it, but I can't get them to turn at all. So it's locked in like a spool right now. But it doesn't seem to disengage, so I'm probably going to throw it back into the truck and see if I can do the locker test that Yukon recommended. Basically, I got in touch with Yukon and asked them if this was a normal operation of this locker. And he said it pretty much always makes noise. I don't know how much of an expert this person is. It could just be rolled off to whoever they want. I don't know, but it's supposed to make noise. Can't find a lot of research information on the ones for the Ford 9-inch. Lots of them on 14 bolts and things like that. And they say it clicks around corners, and I've never heard it click in this locker at all. So issues there, or maybe issues there. Maybe it's functioning exactly like it's supposed to. The other thing I learned was that some people do have Grizzly lockers, granted not the 9-inch variety, and they say that there's sometimes it just sounds like an explosion when it unloads. Like it builds so much tension, and then all of a sudden you end up with at such a point where they're interlaced together that they just have to release that extra pressure. So it basically gets the spring compression out and just all of a sudden releases. And that's originally what I was talking about sometimes in this video, was that some people talk about lockers where they just keep building up the tension, and then all of a sudden it's just a quick instant release, and it sounds like an explosion apparently. I don't know how normal that is. I don't know if that's what it's supposed to do, because these are just people talking about it and saying, yeah, it's just what it is. Who knows if that's really how it's supposed to work. But just wanted to throw this in as a little beginner for this video, because as I'm going through the rear axle there, I'm going to be looking at a lot of things and going, wow, that doesn't seem right. Wow, that doesn't seem right. And this doesn't seem right. And it's just going to be a continuous stream of, I don't know what's going on. And I still don't really know what's going on. But everything right now points to the bearings, the axle, and the entire functionality being pretty much fine. I still don't like that real loud explosive noise that it does every now and then. So I will continue to look into it, but just some beginner information before you watch the rest of the deconstruction and diagnosis, I guess. It's not really a diagnosis. It's just me taking things apart and trying to figure it out, but enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome to Monster Mod Customs. For today we're going to be working on the Frankenstein project. There are a few things I gotta figure out with it. The last time I took it out, since I've been going around and doing things with it a little bit more, is I realized I had another issue that I needed to address. At some point in time it started developing a really loud, not great sound in the rear. But it only happens once in a blue moon. It does not happen very often. I'll be driving and I'll go around a turn, or I'll start to accelerate from stop. And I mean, this is an off-road truck with 513 in it. It's not going fast. It's not turning those wheels quick. I'm not doing burnouts with it or anything like that. But every now and then it will make a really loud popping sound from the rear. And the last time I took it out, I heard that again, and I got underneath of it just to kind of look around, see if I had any play in the U-joints or in the pinion yoke on the rear axle, since I had just rebuilt that. And I didn't notice anything there. I will probably change out the fluid in the rear eventually, since it's a new build, just to see if there's something going on there. If I see any flecks of metal or things inside of the fluid, then I'll know that something's going on there. But I did find another issue that I'm going to have to address, and I'm going to take that apart today, and we'll have a look at it to see what's actually going on there. And I'll show you that here in a second. And while I'm under there, I figure I might as well try to tighten my emergency brake up and see if I can't get that to hold. I keep on trying to do that. I've retightened that thing probably 5 or 6 times, and every time I tighten it up more, it works for maybe 1 or 2 times of pulling that e-brake handle, and then it will let go altogether and I can freely roll it around again. So I don't know if that's just because the throwout isn't enough distance, because these are big GM big brake calipers, sorry. And I'm not sure if that's because it just doesn't have enough pull on it, it's not cinching that emergency brake piece down, or if they're just not functioning as they're supposed to be functioning. But I'll tighten that up today and see if I can't get some kind of e-brake out of it, because that's a nice amenity to have for this thing. Generally, I don't mind it too much. I'm not really using the e-brake all that often. Most of the time I'm parked on a flat surface, and with the giant tires and throwing it in gear, it's not moving. However, it would be nice because sometimes I'm parked on a hill or something like that, and I would like to have that type of amenity. So when I go to park it for long periods of time, I'm not sticking a cinder block in front of the wheel or something like that. But anyway, we'll go over here and we'll take a look at it, and I can show you what I'm talking about as far as what could be the issue with the popping noise in the back. Okay, so here we are underneath the Frankenstein, and I'll show you what I'm looking at here that's cause for concern. It's old, it came with the vehicle, so it could be that this was the issue all along, or it's just been degrading over time, or maybe something about the axle change or something like that caused excess wear. But here, take a look at this. So It's my drive shaft. And when I got under here, I was looking for play in the U-joints or anything like that, and I'm not getting anything out of that. That's tight, that's solid. I'm not seeing anything there. But what I did notice was, I don't know if that's very visible, but I shouldn't have that kind of play in the slip yoke on this. That's a lot of excess play. It shouldn't move up and down like that. So something's worn out in there. And then the additional little bit, I got some rotation in there. That's not good either. So we're gonna pull this off today and pull this apart and see what it looks like inside of here. Maybe I've got some worn out splines, but either way, this is gonna need to be replaced. And honestly, it's seen better days. The seal end of this is kind of worn out and missing on it. I kept up with greasing it, but with how it is right here, and especially with that kind of flex to it, maybe it's been just spitting it out. It's hard to say. But we'll take that off today and take a look at it and see what I've got. And then I'll be probably placing an order for it. Let's take a look at what we got here. See what kind of damage there is. There we go. Okay. Alright, so here's what we're looking at. It still has play even after taking it off. It's got just a little bit of back and forth and a little bit of side to side rotational. And here we are. Got some definite dirt and debris in there. But overall, the splines don't look terrible, but all the coating that's on them is, I don't know if you can see that, is just kind of flaking off of it. So we're not quite getting the seal that we used to on this thing. And I'm not sure if that's something that can be remedied or if I'm just buying a new one. I can see some, yeah, just some sections where it's actually bit down on it and kind of chunked away at it. But overall, I'm not really seeing much damage here. So this definitely isn't our problem. It is a problem. With this seal broken down, it was definitely letting something by. You can see that it's kind of chipped away here. And no amount of grease was going to save that. So, at the very least, this seal needs a replacement if I don't have to buy a new one. And this needs to be re-dipped somehow. Inside of here, it's about the same. Some mud kind of greasy mud at the bottom. It's really hard to see, but you can see some of the machine marks on the splines there, so they're not bad. They just have a little more slack. I guess the next step is going to be draining the oil out of here and seeing what that looks like. And then from there, I guess we just break it down as we need to find out what's going on with this. If that takes pulling the third member back out of it, then I guess that's what I'll have to do after I pull the axle shafts. But for now, I'll pull apart the lower and see if I've got... I did install a drain plug in this differential, and I'll be able to drain it out and find out if it's got anything in the bottom. It's a magnetic drain plug. So I could take that apart, well, drain it out and find out, and then start taking it apart as need be. And I don't know. I don't know what we could be dealing with here. So I jagged this side up a bit just to kind of lean it this way, because this is where my drain plug is at. I put it off to the side, that way if it gouges on a rock or something, it's not going to get it stuck in there in a way that I could never get it out. So I can see some metal fleck, which you could probably see right there, right along the edges. Now all this was new bearings, so some break-in I could see, not like this. This is different. Not to mention that that's not exactly good either. If it would focus, it's not going to want to focus. But you can see that's all just metal filing. It's really fine, but it's not great. Oh boy. And of course I left the rag over there. So I guess I'm pulling this rear end apart. Liquid's got good viscosity. It hasn't overheated or anything like that. It feels good. Okay. I guess that means I'm going to jack this thing up, put it on stands, and start removing parts. It's turned into a bigger project than I anticipated. Oh, we're going to find out. Alright, I'll bring you back in once I get these things off. Okay, so here it is. No tire, no brake, no caliper, all that's been removed, and I can turn this pretty easily, and it does shift and move and do all that good stuff. The issue I have is that right, where is it at? Right here. It binds up a little bit. So there's some kind of binding in here, and I don't know if that's got to do with the brake caliper on the other side. Maybe that's just kind of wonky since it doesn't really have the retention anymore. But once I remove that, we'll be able to find out for sure. But first I'm gonna pull this axle shaft and we'll see. Alright, so that binding issue was just the brake over there catching. I'm not getting any binding in this. I'm getting nothing. It feels nice, it feels smooth, but something's wrong in here. So we're gonna take it apart and find out. Please don't be half inch. Okay, thank God. 9/16 it is. here's what I'm looking at. On this side, I got a good bit of putty metal, but these are brand new, and this is a metal, see, on a metal bearing. Like the bearing should be fine. That should be fine. I'm not sure what's going on here. All of this looks about standard. I see some little wear lines, but these are, I mean, brand new, so they're just being broken in. They're not dying. I think most of that putty down there was either just throw up from what was coming out of the axle, because that's a good bit. All right, so I guess it's time to pull the third member out, because I don't know what is wrong with this thing. So the axle shafts, yeah, they've got like metal putty on the outside, but that could just be from whatever was going on in there, or because these are brand new axle shafts and that's a metal, a brand new bearing with the metal retainer right here that basically is just sitting against that or against the outside. Actually, yeah, I don't see any wear marks on the outer axle seal. No marks on the race. Bearings rotate good. They don't make any noise. So I think this is just general wear in, because every single bearing in this axle was new. But I don't know. So I guess now I'm going to pull the third member and we'll see what's going on. It doesn't seem like the axle shafts were slipping. The splines, I would see a lot more damage on the outside of those splines. And there's nothing. It looks just about brand new. You can still see the milling marks on it. On the very, very outer edge, like the last, I don't know, not even a quarter of an inch, eighth of an inch on there, you can see it's thinned out a little bit. So it seems like it's the engagement, but this is going all the way in and engaging with it even an inch out. Here, I'll show you. Come on. All right, that's it in the sleeve. So that's it going into the third member. Come on. And right there. So right here, this is engaged. And it's got all that room to the edge of this black seal right here. So a full-on inch more space, and that's pushed in further too, of engagement. So I don't know why there'd be excess wear on the outside of that. I really am not sure what's going on with this thing. But now it's time for that thing to come out. Nice thing about these 9 inches is that you don't have to just pull the whole gears, the individual gears out. I can just take that whole third member out, and I'm not really messing with anything in the lash or the lineup of my ring and pinion. It's all still there. I just have to put it back in. That is a heavy piece though, so this is going to be a pain to get out, but I guess here we go. Always a little scary being under here when it's up on jack stands. Jack stands are plenty enough to hold it, but you can never be too sure. And that's why I like to keep these wheels under here too. So if it does come down, I'm at least catching like the leaf springs or something over here on the tops of these, and that'll give me just a littlest bit of room to, you know, not get crushed underneath the rear of this truck. It's not gonna be 9/16, is it? Oh, it is? Oh, lucked out. Ran into one of my old problems. I need to remember that when you go to loosen this bottom bolt, the further out it goes, the closer it gets to the edge here, and then I can't take this back off. So I've got to pull this whole thing out while I'm unscrewing this bolt in order to get this off. Ah, what a pain. Okay. Good Lord. This thing's heavy. Alright, let's set her down. Alright, let's see how bad it is. Okay, I expected much worse. Well, I don't know. There's some chunks in here. Really tiny. Something. I think this is residual from... that's metal. It's a shaving. Honestly, not terrible. I think the only things I pulled out of there were residuals. And that one would be on me, just because, I mean, I cleaned it I don't know how many times, but I did do a lot of metal work on like the inside of this. At one point this thing had a detonation of some kind in here, and it did not like it. So I had to do some just little touch-up stuff. This isn't really. Let's get a closer look at the gears. Let's see what we're looking at here. Okay, so here's the gears with the Yukon. Doesn't look like I've loosed any bolts there. That looks pretty good. The edge is still milled nicely, so it's not grinding up against anything it's not supposed to. We are, I wouldn't say terrible in there. It looks good. Now this turns out to all be some weird little locker thing. I'm gonna be a little pissed off I took this out. So the retainer's still good. This is holding in. It did have slack in it though, so I guess let's take a look and see if we can see where that slack might be coming from. Is it coming from the locker? Where's it coming from? Okay, here it is. I'm not seeing excessive wear. Some center line marks there. Some center there. Bearing looks good. That's good. Down in there, looking pretty good, all told. None of them seem to be pitched out. We'll have a look back here at the pinion. Pinion also looks pretty good. I'm at a loss here. I've got wear pattern. Could probably go just a tiny bit deeper. Good there. Give it a little turn. No slack in that. guess I could bring in an axle shaft and see if it's pitching out in the locker, and that's what I'm dealing with here. But overall, I'm hearing no bearing noise. I see no signs of any kind of clipping defects. My ring gear looks good. Could use a slightly deeper wear pattern, but that's not terrible. My outer looks good. No bearing noise. Everything's still in exactly the same place I left it when I put this back together. So what is happening here? What is going wrong in this rear end? Something is not working. Now, one thing I remember hearing about came down to these, is dang jets flying around again. Anyway, what I was saying was, what I remember hearing is that these lockers, because it's an automatic locker, will sometimes pop and do weird things, but this is just unusually noisy pop that's coming out of this thing. But if I'm just torquing it too much, or if it's getting, well, I can't say I'm torquing it too much, I'm really just accelerating. I'm not doing anything else to it. I'm not going for speed records or anything. I guess we'll bring an axle shaft in here and see if we can't replicate that slack in the line and see if it's coming from the locker or if it's coming from something inside of this assembly. Well, I mean the ring and pinion gear. All of this is inside of this assembly, so I guess we'll find out. I'm at a loss. Yukon Grizzly Locker, Ford 9-inch, 31 spline, all correct. I'm operating with 31 spline axle shafts. I got about, I'd say, an inch of measurable middle distance there. And I'll show you out here. I've got a little over an inch here. So when these are up and, well, they're not fully placed. Yeah, this could get a little bit more. This could, yep, get a little bit more. So when they're fully in, they're right there and right there. Ah, I got oil. Axle grease all over this. Yeah, so yeah, it goes in even a little bit further than that. So that's its distance. And that's as far as that seal's gonna go. I'm thinking maybe that slack when I had it down was the locker shifting out because one wheel was gripping and the other was not. If anybody asks about it, like this damage right here, that was there before I got the truck, and when I took it apart, that's something I had already seen. Basically, somebody had well, like I said, at one point in time it had some kind of failure in the rear that kind of blew apart something. I'm guessing some of these bolts came loose and knocked that little segment out. But other than that, I'm just not seeing an issue. I'm not seeing anything that would lead me to believe that this is malfunctioning in any way, shape, or form. Or for that matter, any reason why it would make noise. I don't know. Alright, this is where I'm gonna stop today. I'm honestly at a loss with it. The only thing that I've seen in there that could be in any way really, like, we've got a couple of things going on. The drive shaft definitely is not supposed to pitch up and down, but that's not what's causing my problem. Maybe some drivability concerns, but something else is going on there. As far as the rear end goes, I just don't know. It looks like it's fine. It's all new bearings, so I expect there to be some wear and tear. Realignment on the ring and pinion gear, so I expect there to be wear and tear there too, which could be where all that putty came from. Outside of that, it doesn't seem to be malfunctioning in any way. Maybe it's just the locker. I mean, they did say that the locker could pop or make noise, but this is aggressive noise that's coming out of this thing. But it only does it, you know, once every 3 drives that I take, and I'm not really sure. I don't know. If you've got any ideas, let me know in the comments. Maybe somebody else is a better expert at this than me. I'm not an expert. I'm just trying to figure it out. But maybe the Grizzly locker, it really does just make that noise every now and then. Maybe it's unloading. But I don't really hear it all the time going around turns or anything like that. The last time this happened was in that ride-along video when I was at the stoplight in the center of the little town area. And as soon as I went to accelerate, it made that really loud popping noise, and I can feel it free up. But otherwise, I'm not getting anything out of this. So I will see you in the next video.